There is some big news regarding Farthest Frontier. Hello again there, friends and fans. Raptor here, and welcome to our first look at an upcoming update for Farthest Frontier. This, if you haven't heard, is an amazing city builder. Farthest Frontier is kind of like a colony survival settlement simulator based somewhere between the medieval times and like pre-industrial revolution right before there, and it is amazing. I've been absolutely enthralled by this game. Tons of live streams, tutorials, and a video series on the channel too. So if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, mostly because I have keys to give away for all of you watching now. So if you'd like a chance to win those, make sure you subscribe right now, smash the like button, say hello down below in the comment section, and also get to the Discord with the links down below, and we'll do some giveaways soon because this game is amazing. I've been playing this for about a month, and there certainly were some issues at the start of the game before the game was released into early access about a week ago, and now Update 1 somewhere around the corner with a release date of being somewhere soon. TM. But version 0.7.5, otherwise known as Update 1, is going to first and foremost primarily focus on performance and optimization, not only of the game's performance, but also quality of life of menus and UI, and make things a lot easier. For example, things updating with the trader. But hey, let's get into it right now, and we'll talk about all the updates that lie in store soon. First of all, performance and optimization. Currently there's a memory leak that occurs when reloading repeatedly that eats up your RAM, so if you're loading another save or reloading an autosave, load times will potentially cause the game to not load at all. And each time that the developer updates the game, they do plan on focusing on any and all lag in terms of either the city size or perhaps with some of the menus, and they'll continue to monitor for issues with loading and work on fixes to get the game going and get you playing. It's going to be pretty good, I think. There were certainly a lot of issues with the larger city before, and there's still issues like, for example, with the opening UI windows and opening overlays such as desirability. And when buildings are finished, there's like a puff of smoke that causes a little bit of lag, which can be real tiresome, especially when you're building a small wall or something like that. Every time a little section is complete, your game will hiccup for just a moment, and it becomes kind of tedious. Manageable, but you want that smooth, buttery feel. Cows, when they're fenced into, by the way, are creating issues where they can't really find their way out of fenced-in areas, and sometimes they can, although it could also tank your frame rate as the game tries to calculate ways for cows to exit the enclosure or whatever you may have built. And so there's also a lot of performance degradation at high population as well, and so the excessively long load times for bigger cities and or of course when you're actually playing the game is going to try to be reduced, and of course memory use accumulates when re-rolling and restarting maps constantly too. So as you get into the game, if you restart a map because your city, you kind of got off to a bad start, or you want to keep re-rolling so you could change and get different maps, will be updated soon. Now let's talk a little bit about the starting experience of the game. The game is meant to be challenging but satisfying to learn, and so tutorials will be coming soon to ease everyone into various mechanics and then eventually learn that in order to up the difficulty and of course increase the challenge over time. So for those of you who might not know a lot about the game and don't really want to learn from anybody else's tutorials, you can learn from doing inside the game and make your cities better and better over time. There's also going to be a new map type available at the very start called the Idyllic Valley, and this is going to be selected by default every time that you start a new map, and so it's supposed to be the easiest start with lakes and mountains, and it'll kind of have every resource. In fact, it will, except for of course things like swords or preserves or whatnot. Those don't grow on bushes, as they say, so this will be for the easiest start and have a lot of great details next to each of the options, so that way as you're trying to pick a map that best suits you, it'll tell you of what all the challenges may be, and will tell you a little bit more about what each of them have and don't have, or whether they're more difficult or easier than others. This is good news, by the way. If the developers are putting in a new type of map this early, things, for example, like rivers and maybe large coastal maps could be coming soon. This is just speculation, this is just my hope, but that would be something great to see. And in a future update, they hope to incorporate difficulty scaling for things like food spoilage and crop disease, so that way, as you're playing the different types of, like, for example, Pioneer or Vanquisher or whatnot, you can go ahead and and slide things back and forth to even more define your experience, which is amazing. Rather than just being easy, medium, and hard, you have the option to adjust every setting in the game. In fact, right now, if you go to advanced settings, there's a lot of options for things like your starting materials or starting population, or how many diseases that will happen throughout the entirety of the gameplay. So it's quite cool. Now you'll be able to turn up and down things that you want to see more of or less to tailor the experience every time that you play. I like that. It's a good change. All right, let's move forward now to resources, quarries, deep mining, and forestry. Now, as we all know, sustainability of the towns in the endgame can be quite tricky, and with a little bit of a difficulty in your budget, you might not be able to buy all the resources that you need, especially if you're in a smaller map and you've mined every rock and stone and cut down every tree, and so waiting a long time for those to grow back and to trade for stone can be tedious and really cumbersome, especially at the trade depot. So this future update will significantly increase the amount of resources within mineral deposits, so things like coal and gold and iron will be much more plentiful, and also stones will be more plentiful too, as well as trees regrowing faster and producing more wood. This means that the work camps with 2 workers should be able to cut down all the trees without any additional micromanagement for a very long time, and making a work camp full will take a lot longer to cut down and clear an area. This is important, especially if you're harvesting an area in order to cut it down to clear the way for a building or a large section of town, or to build a farm field. So logging is going to take more time, and so thus could slow down but also speed up the growth of your town. With more logs comes more firewood and more planks, so you could at least have more materials to build things, just a little longer to actually clear the land. And of course, the Mega Rock. Behold, it's a massive stepping stone to a long-term solution. Get it? So with things like, for example, quarries and whatnot coming, this is kind of a temporary solution to provide a massive amount of stone, and it'll be something more than likely to be in the end game too. It'd be great to be able to see that and possibly use it as a structure to defend your town. For example, if a giant boulder is in the way of the enemy, maybe you could build a wall into it in order to block their movement. That'd be kind of cool. So they're addressing an issue now where some resources such as herbs and willow and other things are generating outside of the pathable area. So maybe, for example, at the top of a mountain, or in the case of things within lakes, maybe in an area on an island where you can't reach, or perhaps along the edge of a coastal line of a lake that you just can't get out to. Some of you have resorted to making tree decor, trees your main source of wood. Not great. Planting a bunch of oak trees in order to cut them down. We've all been there. And or possibly cutting down your orchard trees too for wood. It's a fine workaround, but not a real fun one, as the devs say. So it's definitely an interesting solution. But of course, discussing solutions for those forests, ultimately they want there to be ways to maintain forests on the map without having to micromanage planting a bunch of oak trees in order to cut them down. Interesting though, profitable and exploitable. Planting a bunch of trees and then, of course, only costing 1 gold, and then cutting down a big oak tree to then turn it into planks to make furniture. Could be quite profitable if you want to do that long big crazy production chain. That's what makes it like Anno, and that's why I like it. It's good stuff. All right, time to start talking about production and storage management. So currently there are some limitations for resource management that they're going to address in future updates, and there's no current way to transfer resources between storages. Something they want to change, but currently it would be a great idea, for example, to load up a wagon with all the resources needed to make, let's say, a barracks, and then of course pull it up in front of a storage building, load up the wagon, then have it head out to the construction site, and then have the crew just take it right from the wagon to the construction site and build it right there, which certainly speed up building of a lot of larger structures far, far away. That's something that they're going to be working on. And speaking of transporting things, the trading post has an issue right now where the resources are being gobbled up between transfers. So when you're moving stuff from a warehouse or a storage area to the trading center, it could possibly be in limbo, disappear somewhere in transit, and you might not know exactly how much you've got until it's delivered, and or vice versa from the trade center to storage, although that's less of an issue since it's not transferred by a person, but transferred right away. Items are still there, they just don't show up in a storage building, so that's something that they work or are working on resolving. There's no way to set quotas at the moment, so some of your buildings, for example, are endlessly making tools and using all your iron until you actually change the ratios, and they want there to be a way to set storage so that way it can keep at least X number of resource nearby. So if you have a furniture factory somewhere in a corner and you want all of the resources there, for example planks and logs, to then be used by a nearby sawmill to then turn those into planks, put the planks in storage, and then be delivered to the furniture store. It'd be great to always set a minimum or a maximum there. So you can always spread out your resources to where they need to be, so that way everything can be in stock for production. And speaking of production, there's no way to set limits, just like we mentioned, so there's really no way to end something's production, and it's produced endlessly based on ratios. So there's a lot of micromanaging between all your resources, and this one is a must to have better control of your buildings and inputting and outputting materials. So there needs to be a way to set some sort of a halt or to produce X number of products, so that way there's a way to make sure that it doesn't gobble up all your resources, including stone. Luckily, stone is mostly made for or used for the making of buildings, so that's pretty good. So there will be a way, at least in the future, to check and uncheck entire categories of a resource storage, so that way if you don't want, for example, food stored in any of your storage buildings, and force it to go to the root cellars, because of course a storage building, like for example the storehouse, can store anything, but it won't store food if you tell it not to, and so it'd be easier to just have a one-stop shop for deselecting that, especially for all of your warehouses. That would be helpful. And finally, and this is a big one, the trading post. A number of things lined up for the trading post. First of all, the current notification is just horrible. It really is. It's just a green dot over the trading depot, and you really don't know when anybody arrives unless you track the wagon rolling in. And so you can actually monitor the arrival of them, but you've got to babysit it for like an entire season. So they're going to prioritize improving this in the next version. That's 0.7.5. So you'll be able to hear a notification and see a notification on screen up in the upper left corner where other notifications are, such as low food or a death or an invasion. This time it'll be good news with the trader showing up, and also you'll be able to see what trader it is. So there'll be a sound, you'll see who it is, and you can actually click on it to go directly to your trade depot, so that way instead of scrolling across the screen, you can just get there with one-stop shop. So icon will pop up and you'll be able to immediately start making your trades. And in addition, there's going to be much more I guess AI pathing issues were affecting the trader, where it would burst into flames, and sometimes populations were not able to put out fires frequently at the trading post. I never experienced that, but that apparently is something that they're going to be working on, as well as addressing issues with traders not arriving at all or leaving immediately, or issues with upgrading the trading post, like for example some things disappearing out of it. I've never seen any of that, but the fact that at least they've taken a lot of that feedback and are putting that in there, that's good. I played a long time, never had those issues, so there'll be some more fixes in the future updates coming along too. And they also want to be able to add the option to request a resource. This is huge. It'll be a premium price, but you'll be able to request any resource, for example stone or clay pots or something that you desperately need. For example, one of my towns for the longest time needed beer, so I could build the at the time the tier 2 pub. It's now been moved to tier 3, but at the time it was a building I could build and it would increase desirability, but I couldn't use it until I bought beer, and so that was a great way to raise entertainment and get money early on, but you had to kind of get lucky with the dice roll. So that'll be something coming in future updates as well, and that's going to be very exciting. So it'll be a way to get crucial items without having to wait, and so that's great for things like spice or whatnot, but that is incredibly expensive. But if you can pay the bill, that is something that is definitely worth your time. Save time and spend some money. That could definitely save your town, especially if you're building a defensive wall or an army. True. Alright, on to a really big one, a personal one. Cows and barns. They're a headache sometimes, but they're not supposed to be. There's a number of issues with barns and cows that they're working through. Slaughtering cows stops working, milk production stops working, and cows generate less cows, if you know what I mean, getting it on. Upgrading to tier 2 can also cause the cows to basically disappear, and so they're going to be addressing a lot of those issues. Well, they're already ready for the 0.75 update, so that's going to be good. 0.7.5 will hopefully fix a lot of those issues related to the barns and make going to tier 2 a lot more effective. It's kind of advised to stay at tier 1. Tier 2 certainly has a lot more reproductive value to it, as well as the ability to, I think, hold a few more resources such as milk and also any sort of food that they're eating for the winter. So it's good to update if you're going to save beforehand, but as a workaround, it might be a good idea to stay at Tier 1. But hopefully this will fix all of the farms and all the barns, so that way you can actually use them a lot more effectively on your fields with crop rotation, etc. Arguably, I think they should also create manure during the winter months that you can then use in the spring for all the fields first and foremost. Typically, I make a field that, or a large field, multiple fields of a large amount of different types of fields near the town that people fertilize via compost of course, the night soil person who gathers all that makes compost. But it'd be great to also have one for the cows so they could essentially feed themselves. So that way they could go out to a wheat field and do that. And it works sometimes, but hopefully there's some more fixes to that as well. But good. Cows are getting addressed, and they need to. I would have waited until the cows came home. Apparently they are now. Apparently they are. On to an interesting one. Spiritual buildings. Right now in the game, there's really no spiritual building at all, aside from the shrine, of course, which is more of a decorative building that can be upgraded to Tier 2 at the first upgrade, or Tier 1, it looks kind of like a fountain. And when you upgrade it to Tier 2, it does look like a shrine, but could be easily mistaken for any sort of statue or fresco or fountain or whatnot that's even bigger than the one before. But this is something that they really want to develop and do it right if they're going to do it. So they're not sure if a small church is necessarily the answer or building into a large cathedral, so it could be just a small little chapel made of wood or a massive cathedral. And of course they want it to also have a production chain. If you're going to actually have a church, they want then to be able to get something out of it, like deities that you can then have come to the church, a god or multiple gods, something along the lines of maybe perhaps Lord of the Rings or perhaps Game of Thrones, or from their previous game, Scorv, of course, from from Grim Dawn that everyone continues to mention to me. He's a shout out from the previous game, so something about the glorious return of the Ravager. Whatever they want to do, though, the buildings of that will definitely be into a mechanic and not just necessarily another building that works similar to the theater where money and such then just generates entertainment. That could be something that's just kind of too easy. So if they're going to make their own thing out of it, yeah, rightfully so. They should make it a little bit more of a building that requires more resources and whatnot to run, but then could also provide a lot of benefits like having, good things happen to the town, good fortune, or having separate merchants for that. Something along those lines would be quite interesting based on maybe what way you go. You could choose to not do it at all, do it a lot, do it for multiple gods, have other people come to the town based on who you choose, or multiple problems come to the town. Who knows? But that would definitely be something very interesting. Speaking of religion, graveyards. Graveyard repositioning is coming too. Mistakes have been made and grandma was buried next to the compost yard, or maybe that was the plan all along, and if you feel guilt swelling up inside, well, you might want to relocate that graveyard. So some things they're thinking about for that is just basically some sort of a cost for relocating. So obviously something like a graveyard might be a little more difficult to move than a house or a fountain. So a large gold fee might be, needed to pay off local necromancers. At least that's what they say. So anyway, more on that in the future. That might not be along here, but there's certainly a lot of discussion about that. And that could be something that is definitely good, especially if you build your graveyard too close to your town at the start. And of course, there's no desirability bonus or debuff for it, so it's kind of just space that doesn't give you any sort of benefit, and could definitely be moved. I have no idea how that would go along, but I would definitely like to see something like a crematorium or something to help it so that way the larger cities, or rather the larger cities on smaller maps, don't run out of space. That could be helpful. Definitely helpful. And another use for firewood. Decorations, decorations, decorations. Something that is really great about this game is the desirability, and it's something that I really like about Anno 1800 is the ability to make beautiful plazas and parks and squares and public areas like markets that really blend in well with the town, and Farthest Frontier does that like no other. So they're basically working on making a beautiful town even more beautiful by making more customization options for the variety of different types of structures that you can decorate with and how they'll blend with other buildings together. One thing I really like about this game is how decorations don't feel like an afterthought or something like an end cap at like a convenience store just being tossed onto the end of an aisle just to kind of get it there and make maximum use of the space. You can make all of your theaters and other buildings that could be repetitive look a lot more beautiful with custom parks and decorations around them. Each market could be unique, each neighborhood could be different, and you could decorate around your pubs too to kind of make a beautiful area behind the pub to kind of have a beer garden. So that's something that they're going to be working on for the future, is to add decorations, and then even more decorations. So there's a early work in progress look at decorations that are in development but possibly will change, and I for one welcome our decorative overlords, I guess. Very good. Very good. Yes, keep it up. Good work. Carry on. Well, that about does it for the planned updates for the next update and future updates as well. So good news about the optimization, good news about more production chains and more buildings coming, good news about decorations and easier desirability, and fixes for things like the cows and whatnot that are just absolute pains in the neck at the moment, but are very, very important, especially for making that cheese and, well, like money too, I suppose, for all the leather that they can make, which goes well with the iron to make armor and whatnot. Yeah, good stuff. So let me know what you think about all these updates down below in the comment section. Let me know what you think about the game too in general. How do you think the devs are doing? What do you want to see more of? What do you think they could change? What's something you want to see in the future? And also let me know what you think could be a cool mod. The developers have confirmed that mods will come to the game sometime after 1.0 release, which could be a while based on how well that they solve some of these issues and continue to add more content and definitely make things up to our liking. And of course, in their statement, they said that they were happy to go into early access to definitely listen to all the feedback from the community on what they want to see more of and what they want to see next. So let me know down below. Again, it is confirmed too, by the way, that mod support will be here. So I'd love to see, Lord of the Rings or perhaps Game of Thrones type stuff. But hey, let me know what you think would be cool. And also note that there is talk about end game buildings, like for example, giant castles or perhaps a large monument or something to do with trade. It would be interesting to see something from education to military, perhaps something like Civ, for example, or monuments that you can build just to build them that increase desirability like crazy. Something along those lines would be really cool. Having the options to build something and then not building it or building it is definitely up to you. So giving us more options to build things would be a good thing. All right, well, make sure you go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Jump on the Discord. Come on and hang out for our live streams and ask all the questions you'd like as you learn, as I learn, as we learn in Farthest Frontier. And we bring that frontier more near and near. It's near and dear to my heart, and I love this game a lot. And I'm very much looking forward to games like Manor Lord and other city builders that are under the radar and will come out soon too. Very open to trying out more games and very open to seeing what's new next for Farthest Frontier. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time.